75th anniversary being celebrated here in Washington. What we ought to be doing to reassure our allies around the world is taking up and passing the Defense Authorization Act. The perfect time for it to be on the floor. It has a dramatic increase in defense spending, looking to the future, and with NATO having such a good year, with Finland and Sweden coming in, this would have been the absolutely perfect time to put that on the floor of the Senate, rather than having a perpetual list of assistant secretaries of this or that we've been using floor time on.
Well, I think the leader covered it well, but this is the 75th anniversary of NATO, and it is very fitting that the NATO summit be here in Washington, D.C. I think it's a great opportunity for us to be talking about not only the global threats that are out there, the instability we see in Europe, and continue to build pressure on our NATO allies to up their defense commitments. I think this is the perfect opportunity to do that. And as the leader pointed out, it would also be the perfect opportunity to actually have the National Defense Authorization Bill on the floor of the United States Senate. That is the most important responsibility we have as office holders. And clearly, Senator Schumer has made a decision. We call this the summer of Schumer show votes, because every week we come back here, we vote on a couple of noms, and then we have a show vote on some issue that has no possibility of ever becoming law. These are simply opportunities for the Democrats to try and provide some political cover for some of their incumbents who are in political trouble this year. But the fact of the matter is, we have a limited number of days before Election Day that we're actually going to be here in session. In fact, I think that number, including today, is about 23 days, is actually all that's left between now and the election for us to process one of the most important pieces of legislation that we should be dealing with every year here in the United States Senate, and that is the priorities that we place on our national security and making sure that our country is well prepared for the global threats that are out there. So I'm going to continue to put pressure on the Democrats and on Chuck Schumer to get away from the summer of Schumer show votes and actually proceed to something that is actually meaningful to the American people, and that is, what is this United States Senate doing to ensure that America continues to be strong and safe and prosperous for this generation and for future generations.
On the 4th of July, Joe Biden said, "I had a bad debate." He went on to say that 90 minutes on a stage would not erase the last 3.5 years. Well, he's right. Nothing can erase the damage that the Democrats have done to the American people over the last 3.5 years. They're the party of open borders, and they're the party of high prices. With regards to prices, they have saddled the American people with record inflation. It has been painful. It's been punishing. Prices are up cumulatively 20% since they took over in January of 2021. In terms of immigration, they have invited, they have incentivized 10 million illegal immigrants to come to this country. They've paved the way for criminal cartels, for drug dealers, for people on the terrorist watch list to come here, to rob and to rape and to murder Americans. That is their record. And that's why in record numbers, Americans are saying the country is headed in the wrong direction. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and every one of the Democrats, those that are going to be up here speaking soon, they are all responsible for the damage that has been done. The American people want strong leadership. We're not going to get it from the Democrats. We cannot trust the Democrats to keep us safe or make us more prosperous. It is their policies that have caused the pain. To get this country back on track, we have to stop this reckless Washington spending. We have to secure the border. We have to unleash American energy. That's what Republicans are committed to do.
Well, folks, again, the world is on fire. That's true today. It was true before the debate. So just a couple little quotes here. Last week, President Biden claimed he put NATO together. I did not learn that tidbit in history when I was in school. Maybe y'all did. But that's what Biden claimed. He put NATO together. And then his next quote, he shut Putin down. I'm sorry, when did we get Vladimir Putin out of Ukraine? So again, a lot of confusion on the world stage on what President Biden is actually doing as our commander-in-chief. So bottom line, folks, the truth is he has abandoned our partners, he's abandoned our allies, and he has made the world less safe. And all we have to do is take a look at the results of the Biden presidency. He's been withholding weapons from Israel, our single democratic ally in the Middle East. We have seen him basically invite Putin into Ukraine by saying, go ahead, a minor incursion, no big deal. And one that he will be forever remembered by is the failed Afghanistan withdrawal, where we saw 13 of our service members killed at Abbey Gate in those final days, leaving families wondering what the heck is going on in our country. We see China also increasing their aggression all around the world and coming together in a new axis of evil with Iran and Russia. So, folks, it's clear that President Biden is the abandoner-in-chief, and we really need strong leadership right now. Again, we have the world on fire. We need to extinguish the flames, and that means we need a new leader in the White House.
I hope everybody had a nice 4th of July. I certainly did myself. But when I came back, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that talked about what has happened to the hundreds of thousands of children that have come across the border without an adult. And you need to really look at that because it's another failure of the Biden administration. Children are being placed with sponsors that are using them for work, are using to traffic them, and the blanket is pulled back here on what the Biden administration is doing with the children that are coming across the border, that he is allowing them to come across the border, and then his administration is turning their back on them. So in the last 2 weeks also, I was able to get 2 of my bills passed that I think will have great impacts across the country. One is called the Advance Act. This is the bill that will help us move to the next generation of nuclear energy exploration, but also development. This is small modular nuclear reactors. It's incentivizing the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to get the licensing process going. It's to streamline it. And it was part of the firefighter bill, so we passed that week before last before we left. And the other one is one that I think probably everybody in this room and across the country knows somebody who's been afflicted with Parkinson's disease. There is no national plan for Parkinson's now. There is one for Alzheimer's, but as of 2 weeks ago, there now will be developed a national plan to end Parkinson's disease. We know it manifests in a lot of different ways. We haven't done the research and development across the country, and I personally want to thank the advocates from my state of West Virginia who have served as a very powerful voice for me to make sure that we get this to the president's desk for his signature. Thank you.
Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Senate Democrats have failed America. Don't ask us, ask the American people. Remember when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took office, inflation was under control, the economy was strong thanks to Trump tax cuts, and there were fewer government regulations. Since Biden took over, the Senate Democrats were able to control this chamber. They've passed nearly $3 trillion in spending. They've also given us the highest inflation in 40 years. Now Montanans tell me they can't afford the basics: food, gas, housing. The border was secure when Biden and Harris took office, but they reversed Trump policies And now we see terrorists, we see criminals, see murderers coming across the border and literally murdering young women in our country. Now remember, Vice President Harris was appointed the border czar. Whatever happened to that? Where's she been? 10 million illegal crossings later, there's been nothing done to end this crisis, only have made matters worse. On foreign policy, instead of projecting strength, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have projected weakness, a very dangerous moment in our nation's history. Enemies are emboldened. Our allies don't think we'll back them up. And Senate Democrats did nothing to stop these dangerous and disastrous policies from the Biden-Harris administration. By the way, the Democrats don't have a personnel problem on the ticket. They have a policy problem. The policies of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Senate Democrats have failed our country. And I'm confident the American people will right this ship in less than 4 months.
Mr. Leader.
Well, I think I'll continue the weekly tradition.
Senator, when you were gone, the Supreme Court ruled in the immunity case. Do you agree with the decision granting immunity to the former president for actions he took while in office?
What the Supreme Court actually did was lay out the parameters, but not apply them to this particular case. They sent it down to the lower courts to find facts rather than making up facts that were not actually before the court yet. So, yes, I'm completely comfortable with it.
Leader McConnell, our adversaries are watching. Our adversaries are watching the videos of the president just like we are. They see the same thing we do. Do we have a situation today where leaders like Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un are becoming more aggressive, testing the boundaries more closely because of the weakness they see in this administration and the condition of the president?
Well, with regard to the administration, that's a good question to ask the next group. Before recent times, it was pretty obvious to any observers that we had big power competition from China and Russia, a great ally for them in Iran, and Iran funding the proxies. I mean, this is clearly the most dangerous period since right before World War II. So completely unrelated to who happens to be in the White House at the moment, we need to step up. And a good time to emphasize that is while NATO is celebrating its 75th anniversary right here in Washington. We need to make it clear that we're behind NATO. There are allies in Indo-Pacific who are here as well. Every democratic country in the world is together against this coterie of authoritarians. And what a great time to emphasize that we're all together. I had a similar conversation yesterday with the president of Latvia. I mean, they're right up next to the Russians. And then the majority leader and I and some others met with the Canadian Prime Minister. With all due respect to our Canadian friends, they're a long way from hitting the 2% mark. But a whole lot of the rest of the NATO members have. We only had 3 countries hitting the 2% mark a few years ago. Now we have 23. So I think everybody who elects their government realizes we're all in this together.
Mr. Leader. Mr. Leader.
Don't leave.